Just before we get started, can I just ask by a show of hands how many people have heard of Judicium? Okay, so a few people. So just for those people that don't know, we do all this stuff along the bottom there. So a lot of it is like school services that directors of education don't really get involved in, but then when they step up, become CEOs, you have direct involvement in, and all of a sudden you are directly responsible for that. So Judicium's uniquely placed to give you a bit of context. So we have 1,700 schools. So I'm able to talk about the macro trends, which I'm going to do now. So I'll start off with the big macro trends, and then I'll take it down to the school level. So I went to a talk last week, and the former Labour MP, he's blind, David Blunkett, said that MATs should now stand for movement, acquisitions and transfers, and that's definitely how it feels to us. So schools are becoming more MAT focused. They're moving towards becoming bigger MATs, but that doesn't necessarily push down the cost of finance function at the very start. So you can see here that this really big MAT here, so each dot is a MAT. This is the amount of pupils they have, and this is how much they spend on their finance function as defined by the DFE. So it's not necessarily true that the bigger the MAT, the more economies of scale it brings. However, and I've used some really crude data, and if you're a statistician, you could pull this apart. The more centralised schools get, the more value for money they provide. And then I'm just going to drill down now into some of the details of this data. So in general, our HR department finds that to the left of this line, we'll be talking to head teachers and business managers who deal with HR day in, day out. And to the right of this line, we'll be talking to CFOs and CEOs about their HR decisions. So what I'm going to do is run through some case studies for this, and I'm just going to skip some data because I put far too much in. So this comes from the schools workforce census, and we're in the north of England right now. So this is the percentage of teachers taking at least one sick day for the year, and you can see the more northern we get, the fewer teachers take one sick day a year. I don't really know the reason for that, but the more southern you get, the more teachers decide to take sick days. Don't know what to say about that, but I knew you'd like it, that's why I included it. But what we do is we take some of this data to put schools' HR in context. So for example, teachers that take one sick day are more likely to take another sick day. So what some of our big trusts have done is come up with policies to encourage school staff to never take a sick day. So you'll be able to think of some of the big names, and there's some incentives for not taking that sick day to try and reduce this. So when we speak to schools, the HR data that they collect, sometimes it's really easy to marry it up with this, and other times it's not, but what gets measured gets improved. So that's the first lesson out of this. Are you measuring what schools take sick days, what schools don't take sick days? And then we found this big macro data. We use it every day, and we try and drill it down to the school level, but it doesn't always work. Actually, it hardly ever works, and we've been looking for reasons why this is, and I'm going to try and give you one of those reasons now. Again, north of England, so quite nervous about this. Anyone read this book? Nope, great. So, in the 70s, Thatcher called a vote of no confidence, and two groups of people tried to predict the outcome. So group one only used big macro data. So how have MPs voted in the past? Where did they align themselves on the political spectrum? And group two were only allowed to use gossip. So, for example, they couldn't go up to you and say, well, how are you voting? But they could go up to you and say, how do you think that person's going to vote? And then here's the outcome. So 310 went against and 311 went in favour. And the group that used hard data were way out, and the group that used gossip. They were on the ground, they knew it, they were there every day. They were off by 1. And the one that they were off, the MP changed her mind like a few hours after it was reported. And there's a really great story around that. But the purpose of this is to say that as maths become more centralised, that's the direction we're going in. We're getting much bigger. Every school seems to be joining maths. 10 school maths are swallowing up 5 school maths, 15 school maths. As we join maths, our HR services are finding that schools are becoming more focused like this. So we speak to like the chief financial officer, the person centrally, and we get less of this information, which is actually, in terms of HR, it's much more useful for you. So when I was thinking about conclusions, like what are you taking away from this? My only thing to say is, obviously you appoint whatever partner you want, but in general, what we would say is when we found it to work best is when you appoint a partner, like whatever third party that is, try and make sure there's some of this in there, that conversation, the to in and the fro in, rather than the odd phone call or the odd email. That's me done. Thanks.